Hey there, welcome to Better Conversations with myself, Sehaam, and we've got Mag this time. I'll point this way, over here.
Back in the saddle again. I never know which
Yeah,
way to point. It's the
yeah,
opposite way
it's the
around.
opposite, isn't it?
But it's a bit disco, so it's all good.
Well, we can shuffle around, Mag, if you like.
Yeah.
Join the. Anyway, if you're joining us live, say hi in the chat. If you are watching the replay, you can pop your questions in the discussion below. We are here Tuesdays, 1 o'clock UK time. We're also live streaming on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and you also find us on betterconversations.live. We are streaming at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Central European Time, 5:30 India Standard Time, and 10 p.m. It's a good way to go to sleep, I think. 10 p.m.
Is it?
East Coast. Shh. Uh, East Coast, Australia. So in Sydney, right? So yeah, do join us, and if you want to join us on Better Conversations Live, we're always open to and looking for people to come and share some of their knowledge and talk to us about a specific area, right, Mag? So
Definitely. We are delighted to welcome new people and to learn from them. It's very much a community spirit, and it's all about sharing what we know and finding out what you know and coming up with something better. So, yes, please.
absolutely. So yeah, reach out to Mag, reach out to me, or drop an email to bclive at betterconversations.co. So, Mag, it's really lovely to have you here. I've missed you. It's been we've had the summer, and you're back, and it's fantastic that you're here.
Yeah, yeah, I'm feeling much more back than I have in a long time. Things with long COVID are finally going in the right direction, and I must actually record a video on that for people who feel they're never going to get better because I felt like that. But yeah, since August, things are going in the right direction. I've got more energy, and I'm very excited to be here sharing that energy with you today.
Brilliant, brilliant. And today we're going to be talking about one-to-ones. Something we get asked about a fair bit. We're starting with a broad question. What are they for exactly? Mag, what are they for?
So they're for a lot of different things, in my opinion. But if I was to have to give one response to that, it would be to form relationships with members of the team, and then a lot of goodness comes out of that. There's a thing here which is quite personal for me. I always think of my deathbed, but it's kind of nice. It's, surrounded by flowers and nice people. It's all good. And I think when I look back on my career, what will I remember? And I will remember the people. And one-to-ones are a really rich place for me to really get close to someone and find out what drives them, what they want to do, how what they want to do aligns with what the team needs to deliver, what the business direction is. So it's really a two-way conversation that is respectful, safe, trusting, and a bit fun as well. I'm not a traditional serious lead type. I really value it as a space to get to know someone really well.
Well, I like that you mentioned that. The certainly, I laugh a lot um,
You do.
with my clients in those one-to-ones, and when I've had them team members, that's been a big part of it because there's usually something to laugh at, whether that's yourself or the situation or
Yeah.
whatever. I think there are opportunities, definitely. Not all of them. It's being
Yeah.
sensitive, right?
Obviously, yeah.
But yeah, I love one-to-ones. There's a lot of energy exchanged. From my perspective, and certainly with my sort of leaders who coach hat on, those
Mhm.
one-to-ones are about alignment. So we're both
Yeah.
clear on the whole topic, and we're going to get into some of that
Mhm.
in a minute, and also creating some forward movement. So if you're
Definitely.
stuck, moving forward. If you're stuck brainstorming and figuring out what you can do, what your options are, or just to even just have a thinking space, right, to think about things more broadly and further into the future. But definitely some sense of forward movement, a shift in your thinking or your approach to stuff, right?
For sure. And actually, funny you say about forward movement, because I love having my one-to-ones walking. So I find that to be a kind of physical manifestation of what you're trying to do in the one-to-ones. And it takes a level of formality out of them. You can go grab a coffee, grab a hot chocolate, sit, luckily in my last job, I was right near St. Paul. So there was a nice water feature. Just relax and really get to the soul of what you want to talk about. And definitely, it's all planning for the future in exactly the way, we deal with in Leaders Who Coach. It's where do you want to get to? What's the goals you want to achieve? Do they align with what we're trying to do? And really getting to the details. Accountability comes into that really quickly when you're looking at a future goal. So, okay, you want to get to this goal. What's the first step? When are you going to do it by? And then having that loop of check-in on how's it going and what support do you need, or do we need to shift direction? It's a moving thing, and it's constantly, not necessarily in a linear fashion either, but in an organic and in the moment, dancing in the moment fashion.
Definitely.
Where do you like to have your one-to-ones? What's the setting for you?
I'm quite particular, and it might be because I've got a slightly deaf in one of my ears.
Okay.
And so I'm very particular about the space that I'm in for meeting them. I don't like distractions. So if it's a virtual session, I've got a sign on the door, don't come in.
Like a teenager.
Yeah, and I like the focus, because I want to be there 100% for that person. And if I'm doing it in person, I will actually position the individual so they've got their back to, if it's a glass wall,
right,
onto a corridor, so that they're not distracted. It's easier for me. I can ignore people passing, but if you're in an office and you can see your colleagues passing, that can be quite a distraction for people. So I have developed a sort of a preferred environment to hold those one-to-ones in, for confidentiality as well. That's really important, that you're in a room that you can't be overheard. If the person feels like they can be overheard, and a lot of these working spaces feel like that, there may be walls, but they're not soundproof. That will stop people from really opening up, exploring, and making the best use of that time with you. So yeah, definitely.
And I suppose what you've said there as well, how you have specific needs and the person who's coming to see you has specific needs. So, when I said about moving, there's one person in particular I'm thinking of, and both of us are quite energy. And then I had another reportee who, we just used to go for a fancy lunch together, and we would just have the act of having lunch. I know that there are situations as well where the office meeting room, and you're right, confidentiality and that safety to talk freely is really important, and building the trust so people actually share with you is vital to the situation. How do you tend to build trust with people? How does that all start for you?
For me, it's really so that they understand I'm there, I'm really present. And I think that's why, for me, the environment is really important. I want them to know that I'm present and I'm listening. We've all had that sort of interaction with somebody where we're sharing something quite important, but they appear distracted, or they're grabbing something, and you're like, I don't really want to share anymore, because I don't know if you're going to, if you're really tuned in and listening to me. So for me, that is, I guess that's just being present is super important, because I don't want to miss stuff. And I feel terrible if I think they said something and I totally missed it and I go
Yeah.
off on a tangent. That's not helpful. So yeah, how about you?
So I think, yes, it's very similar to me to what came after, being a lead on one-to-ones in the world of coaching. It is really getting yourself into the zone of listening and being present and having that confidentiality mindset. And also there are things in coaching that are keys for me when I step into the coaching room. And one of them is unconditional positive regard, that is my mindset towards the other person. That really helps to, have a positive mindset and to think, okay, we can do this together. Let's figure out how. I find as well, when you talk about that distraction situation, I think it takes a little time to land. And I think a bit of a giggly kind of start to it, or a, phew, that was a busy week, or let's get a coffee, just whatever kind of brings you into the moment where you kind of land and you're both in that zone where you're both feeling present and listening and willing to share. I think that's a really good start to it. And in terms then of trust as well, I'm probably, I won't say a stepper over, but I'm very personal. And I tend to know more about people than just what they're doing at work. So there's a lot of lovely things to talk about, to ask about their families or their new motorbike, or whatever the thing that's important to the person. And I really care about that. That's not an act. It is like, we're humans. People forget that we are humans working together with all of the joys and the challenges of being human, with the nights where we haven't slept well, with the going through emotional tough times, and that all comes to work with us. We're not robots. We can't switch it. So the person is definitely a large part of the one-to-ones for me. And then I suppose there's a line that you have to kind of honor when it goes too far, So I think it's keeping a mind on the professional side of it as well, because that's what you're both getting paid to do. But with a very heartfelt, I think, intention is how I approach it.
Yeah, and look, that some people talk about that as small talk, don't they? And they, I don't like small talk. I just want to get straight into it. And I try and challenge people to think about that in a different way. And to your point, we have to synchronize with each other, mood, energy, where are you at, so that we know, what's going to be the cadence of the energy of our time together in the one-to-one, right? So yeah, absolutely, really important. I wonder if we can shift a little bit to more of the content of one-to-ones. So I get asked a lot, and the reason that we're having this chat is, what goes into a one-to-one? What should I be talking about? And you get the when you get into the nuts of, well, what are you talking about? What's the content? What are you covering in those? A lot of them tend to be quite tactical, and so I encourage people to think about, there's two types of one-to-ones. There's the tactical that might be more frequent, short catch-ups, so that you can do, just check in with each other and course correct as you need. And then there are the sort of bigger, meatier meetings that might be once a month, once every 6 weeks, that you can call them strategic, you can call them growth meetings, but they're really about getting that individual to think sort of bigger about their role, their skill set, where they want to go, how their team sort of operates if they lead a team, and so those two are quite distinct and they have a different flavor. I wondered what your thoughts are.
For sure, yeah. I kind of was, as you were describing that, I was identifying the different scenarios in my head and how they've played out. So I think there are, in the moment, grab someone or they grab me one-to-ones, where something's gone down and it's either upset the person, or they're blocked, or they're confused, or there's emotions, or they're not happy with what happened. And And it might be from the lead's perspective or the team member's perspective. And that's where you go away and you grab a coffee and you talk about it. And it's like, I didn't like what this situation turned out to be, or someone's not listening to me, or I didn't have the power that I thought I was going to have in that meeting, or, something's come up in my family. I think I'm going to be away for the next 3 weeks, whatever those in the moment ones are. And that really is a responsive one where you kind of, as the lead, if you're the one being initiated, it's really about, again, you going into that listening mode and you thinking about the other person, you putting all of your energy on them. And there are times when the team takes the second seat to the person, so if you build a really good team and you have lots of one-to-ones with everyone, the team can take slack for an individual if they need it. So I think about the bigger picture as well. Whereas the sort of scheduled ones then are much more strategic and they're more focused on aligning the person's goals with the team's goals. I actually really love those reactive one-to-ones as well, where you spot something or somebody else spots something and you have the conversation in the moment before it begins to fester. What's your view on that?
Yeah, definitely. So to me, kind of, it's like a branch. There's tactical and there's scheduled tactical, which might be your regular time to sort of do an update or troubleshoot, whatever. And that might be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or half an hour, right? Depending on how busy everyone is. But then I think what you're talking to there is the ad hoc ones where you spot something as a manager and you kind of go, I just want to have a quick catch up with so-and-so. And that can be 5-10 minutes. It can be grabbing a coffee. Absolutely. So it's noticing those things and being able to be responsive where you can.
Absolutely.
In the moment. Yeah.
Noticing is a huge part of it.
Yes.
In fact, I think
Yes.
it's a lovely, curious skill to have on all members of the team.
And, those ad hoc ones might come as a result of just having had a team meeting. And so something shows up that you want to. And so as a leader, I think it's, you can have those back to backs, but you don't leave yourself any space to be able to respond to the team and see and deal with and be available to anyone who needs something, needs a quick chat. And it can literally be like 5 minutes. It can be a bit longer, 10 minutes, but and it just sometimes is about reminding someone, we've been working on that, how you hold the meeting, how did you think that went, and offering them a chance to kind of remind themselves, because that's one of the hardest things about change, right? Or when you're experimenting with new skills, is the moment you're in a meeting and you totally forget to try out something or do it differently.
Hey, weren't you supposed to prod?
Yeah, exactly. And then after the meeting, you have that, I should have tried X, that might have worked. But that gets easier, right? You just catch yourself sooner and sooner in the moment, and that comes. But, that accountability in terms of practicing or growing or strengthening a muscle, so to speak, for someone can be a quick sort of, hey.
I was curious, when you are, we're always changing. I mean, that's kind of a lot of the point of having one-to-ones is people are changing. They're growing in skills, they're growing in communication, they're growing in maybe towards leadership if that's their track. How do you plant the seeds in the right way and cultivate those to get someone both where you want to go and where they want to go?
Ooh. Well, it is. You said it. It's planting a seed, right? And I think a lot of that is knowing the person, how they process information, how much time they need. Some people think really fast and respond really fast, and some people like to sit with something for a little bit longer. And I think the thing we forget is that if we've got an idea about something, we've been sitting with it for quite some time, and the idea has grown on us and we've become very attached to it. And the other person hasn't even occurred to them. So one of you is here and the other one is here. And I think what tends to happen and I'm sure you've seen this, Mag, is we present an idea and we think it's fantastic. And we're like, why can't people instantly get how fantastic that idea is? And so we end up responding to the pushback that we get, when actually the pushback is a good sign. It means they're engaging with your idea, but it is the first time, so cut them some slack. And also, just, you can present an idea and just say to somebody, you don't need to respond now, but that's what I'm thinking. I'd love to get your thoughts on it and see if there's something I've missed, or there's an aspect to it, right? So you can plant seeds lightly, or you can dump a whole truckload of seeds.
Depending on the person. Wow. I'm laughing there as you were describing all that, because I'm thinking back to earlier years when you were coaching me in the beginning of all this. And do you remember the trademarked touch and wait.
Yes.
And wait. Because just for everybody else's context, I was the dumper of all the seeds on top of a person. I've been thinking about the idea they should just be on board. And the touch and wait thing was completely anti my norm. It's like, let's talk about it. Let's get to it now. Let's go fast. And yeah, the other way works too. And it is really about checking who's in front of you and checking what style works for them. And also, we're experimenting as leads. We're trying to figure out which one of those people are you and what works for you. And it could even be that on a particular day, the fast approach works, and on a particular day, the slow approach works. Some days you mightn't achieve anything strategic in a one-to-one. People might just need to offload so they can go back to their desk and they're a bit lighter, and therefore they're more productive. It's kind of is really about that. But yes, touch and wait is my next tattoo. My first.
Your first tattoo. Well, let me know. Maybe I'll get one too.
Oh God.
But yeah,
Midlife crisis.
but I think that happens a lot. And look, that comes down to, and some people are more receptive and ideas people and really looking for it, and then other people actually need time with an idea. They need more clarity. They like to think about the details, and they don't like being pressed to give an immediate response. It creates anxiety for them.
Thoughtful.
So understanding all of that, and absolutely, we're different from one day to the next, right? Depending on our mood. What about, I had a question this morning from a cohort of leaders, and they asked, I'm paraphrasing here, what if the one-to-ones aren't working?
Mm-hmm. It's tricky when the one-to-ones aren't working. And I think about, when I think of something like that, who are all the people that are in the one-to-one? So there's you as the lead, there's the person, but in the background, there's the whole team. There's who as the lead you report to. So there's all these external forces as well. So when one-to-ones go bad, it is, to do with having contracted something and it not being fulfilled. So it could be for a number of reasons. The contract mightn't have been very strong in the beginning. Did both parties understand what was being agreed to? Did the team members seem like they were committed? They might have said, yes, I'll do that, but did their body language say it? So maybe you missed something there as a lead, you missed the subtleties of commitment. It's easy to measure those. In coaching, it's something like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed do you feel to this course of action? It's sort of dictating versus the team member designing their own solution. So if you give a lot of ownership to someone, they're likely to be more committed. So, hey, we have a 2-week deadline. It's going to be tight for the next few weeks. We need to get A, B, and C done. I could say, I want it done this way. I want it done by Friday. Or I could say, how shall we tackle this? And turn it over to the other person. So getting that contracting correct and getting the commitment level and the energy, that's all really important. So when it goes wrong, accountability is a factor in that. It's like addressing, okay, we talked about this. This is what I took away from it. What did you take away from it? And then kind of reiterating where we should have been at this point and finding out what went wrong, because it can happen that you're not speaking the same language for a while, and that develops as time goes on. And, you know, telling the person, this was my side, what was your side? Okay, we missed something here. How do we deal with it? What can we do better the next time, so that you're always improving? So I think it's language, and it is shared understanding and commitment. They are parts of the sort of foundations for good one-to-ones, and trust, obviously, the behavior of both parties and their level of trust to you. But then beyond that, what are you thinking about course correction and when one-to-ones go wrong?
Well, I think there's some real things, and we talked about it this morning, which is sometimes there's just a personality clash.
Yeah.
Right, that happens. Sometimes the individual isn't clear for themselves about what they want, and maybe, to your point, you need to take a few steps back and actually maybe do a growth plan with them, or do more of a deep dive around that. I also encourage people to do the values exercise, right? Just to have a very loose, gentle conversation about values, and listening really carefully will tell us a lot about what's important to that individual, and we can ask questions around it, right? So where are you getting, where are you able to honor that particular value, and could there be room for growing in that space, or what do you want to do more of that will mean you can be more creative, and so on. So there's that side of things, but there's also the side where, and this is a real side, is the individual may just not be in the right place, and this is why having some way, the piece that you talked about, contracting, you can go through a few cycles of that, 2-3 cycles of, okay, we're agreed this is what you're going to do, and revisit it next month. How did you get on? Okay, we're not, that person is really struggling to make headway on that, or it isn't owning it, and it doesn't feel like their goal for whatever reason. At some point, you do have to make a call as to whether that person is in the right place, and that's the tough conversation that you've then got to have. And there's a couple of ways here, and the leaders on the call this morning, one was saying, maybe I'm not the right person for this individual, and I'm open to them finding a different manager. But also the other option is, I'm going to call it. We've been working on these goals that you said you wanted to achieve, but you haven't achieved them. What's going on? Are our sessions not giving you what you need? And let's have a look at what may be the underlying cause of you just, yes, you're agreeing to things in our sessions, but there's no traction, and actually calling it. And those are the tough spaces, right? Those are the tough spaces of one-to-ones, as a manager, with your direct report. And it's having the, try not to get caught up emotionally in that, because it can be emotionally triggering. You're being rejected as the person who can support them, and you really want to support them. But also, if there's a high emotional charge between you, and the dynamics aren't working, or they're not performing for whatever reason, that's to be found out. We can find that really hard, can't we, to decouple the emotion from what's going on.
For sure. And at the end of the day, we're all animals, and we have a whole load of chemicals that are rushing around in our body and our nervous system, and we can easily trigger each other. And I think it takes a very mature leader, and a very strategic one, in fact, to do those brave call outs. This isn't working. I'm seeing that this isn't working for you. What's at the root of this? And often the answers that you get back are incredibly different from what you expect. You can actually solve the problems if you have the bravery to actually really say, what's going on? I have a feeling that you're not here You're coming in late, you've changed, from what you were like last quarter, what's going on, and really just figuring that out. And another thing that I think is really important is transparency in these one-to-ones. So that brave call out is part of it, and you as the lead as well, you're not invincible. You're a human with all your different emotions. And I think it's another brave lead who says, I'm going through a hard time right now. And, can you, work with me, maybe put in a bit extra for the next month. It's going to be rough, and I'd really appreciate you stepping up. And then that brings a wonderful scenario of people that you have great trust with, and they have great trust with you, stepping up to cover you when you're not having a great time. And it becomes this sort of moving organic creature. I was going to say there as well that progression frameworks, I think, are a huge part as well to successful one-to-ones. That the company has a clear roadmap as to what the levels are, what people need to do to get to the next level, so that you can have those conversations in a really strategic way. I remember one of my roles, and it would come to the time where you would decide if somebody was changing level or getting a pay increase, and my boss would come to me, and it would be as simple as, should John get a pay rise and be promoted to the next level? And I'd say yes, and that was it. Or I'd say, I think we've already decided that we're aiming for next quarter, and these are the things that we're working on doing. And I think the contracting of what is confidential, like, it's a bit different. It's a lot different to coaching in some ways, and a lot the same. Whilst the coaching conversation is completely confidential, there is a duality to the confidentiality in a one-to-one. There's the confidentiality of some parts of it, but other parts are reportable externally to the business. And ultimately, the team member is responsible for doing their part within the team. Hopefully, I'd like to think they're going to try and make your job as the lead easier and just, be part of it. But when it does go wrong, what you've said there, brave, calling it out, course correcting, really laying out accountability, changing lead if needed, and giving them the support that they need within reason. And at a certain point, though, it becomes clear if somebody isn't a fit for the team or the company, and that can be really painful all round. And I try and avoid those situations at all costs by hopefully hiring the people that I think are a good team fit, and then supporting them and making them feel involved. But when it gets to the point that it hasn't worked out, then being really, really human and clear and kind and honorable all the way through, and then helping them to go where they need to go next. And, you've brought in some tools there, such as the values exercise, which you share to people, which is brilliant. And I use that with my coaching clients all the time. I use another thing, which is the strengths profile, to help people to know what's in their toolbox. What are they using a lot? What could they be using more? So that if the situation happens, they have to leave the team or the company, that they're better equipped to carry out their next role. It does get to that at times.
And it's interesting you point out, if they're leaving, I think we have such a fear of upset, like the get well programs or performance management programs that companies have. They're such awkward places, and they don't give people really the best opportunity to show up or to part ways in a healthy way. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of those conversations. And to your point, just being human about it. We can be caring, we can be respectful, we can be compassionate, we can have different goals, and that's okay. But it's being clear and transparent about, we need to achieve this as a team. And, what can, if you've done everything you possibly can to support that individual and give them opportunities, we need to know that we've got that to stand by, and know that maybe the time is to part, but it doesn't have to be so painful. It's so full of legal process and so on that I
Yeah.
think and everyone gets scared with it, that we forget to actually just engage with them as an individual as you would a friend. I mean, you've spent so much time working with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about how should you prepare for a one-to-one?
Well, I like to have a bit of space before a one-to-one, say about 10 minutes. And I have a diary, which I kind of keep a page for each of my team members. And I have a read over it in advance. I get a glass of water, and I just get in the zone of showing up for the person, being there 100%, being distraction free. It's very helpful to put that in my calendar, 10 minutes before the meeting, 10, 15 minutes after. Mm-hmm. There are always actions to take. With regard to those actions, I think when I was a young leader, I used to take a lot of those actions on myself. And as I became wiser, and grayer slightly, mainly here, I started realizing with the whole empowerment thing, it is about getting the team member that you're in the one-to-one with to be their own leader, as well. You're basically, you're not only at this static point in time, you are, creating the new leaders of the future. So you've got to think of that, like how can I give them a bit more work to do to take them a tiny bit towards this new thing. So what else do I do? I think that's mainly it. A glass of water, sit down, be calm, look at the notes from before, think about what we want to achieve, and also obviously the strategy, what the team needs to do for the next month. Agile is always in there in my head, the agile process and how we can make it better. Mm-hmm. What came up in the last retro, things to do with whatever point of the year we're in, and progression framework, what's going on with them personally, all of that stuff. So that's all in my head fresh, because I need notes, and I do the same in coaching. I need notes to make me be a super memory. I don't have that ability on my own, and it really helps me to capture the important items from the meeting. Mm-hmm. But I also encourage the other person to do a similar thing, before they come and meet me, that they go off and they review their notes, so they're prepared to jump in, and we have that chat at the start, and then we're in on it, in whatever the location. We've mentioned different locations and different energy levels and eating habits over one-to-ones. However it works, I think permission to do it in the way that works for both of you effectively that's the ultimate underline. What about you? How do you prepare?
I have a sort of format of how the conversation flows. It's one of the things that I share on the Leaders Who Coach program, is that there is a flow to the conversation, and the best way to describe probably my notes is it looks like a mind map more than anything.
Okay.
So I'm capturing things they're saying, repeating. Questions that I've got around what they've said as I'm listening. I try and maintain eye contact, so I don't keep massive notes. But I go back over them, and I go back maybe over a couple of sessions. And especially if we've had like 3 or 4 one-to-ones, I will go back to the very first one and reference, okay, what was the big goal here? What was the first things that were said as being focus areas for this individual? And are we tracking to doing that? So, that's why having some referenceable notes is useful. But then, the previous one will be, I'll be looking through, okay, what did this person agree to do, and you do need 5 to 10 minutes to get in the headspace, because I know when I'm sitting there looking over it, even the things that I didn't capture, it's like a trigger word.
Yeah.
Things that you've written down, you go, oh yeah, they were going to work on that, or this piece was important. Or I like to capture phrases that people use to describe something,
and relay it back to them, so it's really personal to them. Yeah.
And so they get to know that, okay, at the beginning of our session, there's some accountability here. Did I do the things I said I was going to
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
And so that is, you call it small talk. However, it's checking in, getting a quick update. How are things? What's been fantastic? And also you can put those in the meeting reminders as well, right?
Yeah.
Or even in the meeting itself as prompts for people to prepare. Because the best conversations are where we do prepare, both sides. You're going to get way more just by even as the person who, like the coachee or the direct report, to have actually prepared and thought about, okay, I want to raise X, and just to start to formulate and articulate the thing that you're dealing with, that you kind of want to get your head around. Because very often when we first start talking about something, we haven't really got the words for it. We're still finding the way to describe it and how it feels and why it's important, right?
Yeah.
So doing that and getting in the zone absolutely is important. And as the manager, I think that shows your interest and your level of care towards them, and sets the standard for I prepared. I need you to prepare as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, preparation I think
Lead
is
by
really important.
example. And I think also another thing that's really important is to consider the animal that we all are, and to do some breathing. I know that it's a natural tool to get your body in a calm place, and there is that co-regulation when you start a meeting. Someone might come straight in from another high intensity meeting and they might be like, bah, and you got to sit with that till you both get on the same level. So I think all that, considering everything, all the sides of it, hydration, mental preparation, relaxed body, alert, kind of relaxed alertedness. I had a question for you,
Yes.
which I have not got the right balance to as yet as a leader. So as a leader, my main focus is the people that are on my team. And, I'd like to think a bit of a, peaceful, bravehearty kind of way, where I'm up the front shouting, we're going to do this. And they're all like, she's so loud. But what I want to know is for the level above me. I find as a leader, I do a lot of invisible and strategic conversations. And it's very hard to account for those, if you know what I mean. You see something and then, like those in the moment discussions that we talked about, the informal ones where you're being strategic to address something that's happening right there. So you do lots of those. You do lots of noting of people's body language. You take them for coffee. You do a lot of stuff that's quite invisible in the background of everything. And you as a lead, you have a job, but it's hard to quantify it, especially if somebody who is above you isn't really strategically into people as much as you are. So I don't know how to bring that visibility to the sort of the right levels and how to account for it. It's something I personally struggle with.
Well, it's an interesting point, Mag. So my question would be why what are we trying to achieve by raising that visibility or letting our boss know that we are having these kinds of conversations, or that is our leadership style?
I think it is to validate your role, actually. It is a bit of, everybody else almost on the team is a producer of, very visible work. You're the sort of the one who's kind of running around in the background going, okay, you can do it, or let me take this thing out of your way. But it's not the person who opens the gate on the runway, it's the fire truck that is the important thing. But if that person didn't open the gate on the runway to get to the plane, it would all be a disaster. So it's sort of a strategic way of, and the thing is, with the trust in the conversation with your one-to-one, it's very private and it isn't about shouting it from the rooftop. So I think the purpose is really to bring the visibility to all the work you're doing.
And that's fair, because that's about advocating for yourself and making sure your peers, your boss, and so on understand the value that you're bringing to the organization. Um, I would I would think about, because you're right, what's discussed in those one-to-ones, not all of it is for public consumption, not all of it is shareable.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And you and I would always encourage the individual to be the person who shares that information to the
exactly. Yeah,
extent that they're comfortable. Um, and if we were to need to share some information, it would be with their permission. So
yeah,
that piece has to be really clear, and that's part of the
yeah,
trust, right? In terms of, I think we're talking about a different space in terms of us as a manager and how we are running our team, what our style of leading is.
yeah,
And I think we can do that in different ways. And we can be hold that same kind of safe space for our boss and for our peers, not just our direct reports. And I think the very fact that deeply the goals of each of your direct reports will naturally surface in meetings where
right.
you are advocating for them,
Yeah,
because that is your part of your role, is to advocate for team members of your team, what your team is capable of doing, and make the asks where necessary on their behalf. And I think it just shows differently. We don't need to share necessarily that this is how we lead, or that it's these things are all happening because we're having all those important conversations, but more that we can be strategic in our conversations and talk at that level,
yeah,
because we know what our team members are capable of. We know what stretch our team can go to. We know what additional resources or training or funding or whatever we need to be able to deliver something, or who in our team has a passion for something and would be the best person for doing that. So it will come out because we are advocating for the team as a whole, or members of our team, in a
okay.
strategic way. So that's what I would say
Yeah, that's a good
to that
answer.
one.
And in terms of leadership style, then, I think that is probably something that, if somebody is going for a job interview and
Mm.
they are coming onto a team, coming into a new team, especially as a lead, is quite daunting. But being really clear along the way in the interview process as to how you lead. So, for example, I do one-to-ones once a week, once every 2 weeks with every member of my team. The reason for this is I want a gelled, cohesive team that are working in the same direction. I want people to feel fulfilled and empowered. I want to grow the team so that at some point they outgrow me and you won't need somebody like me anymore. There'll be a new age, and it'll develop that constant kind of culture. And so that's 1 day a week of my time will purely be on one-to-one.
Yeah.
And then there'll be ad hoc firefighting. And I guess it's really the contract between you and them as to what your role is defined by. So you
Mm-hmm.
putting in, this is important to me in my coaching leadership style, in my nurturing leadership style, in my listening leadership style, really getting that across and having a contract with the other, leads above you or on your level. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a really
Mm-hmm.
important conversation to have. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And those what we haven't sort of dived into very much is what goes on in those conversations. Maybe we can talk about that another time. But that can range from brainstorming, troubleshooting, firefighting, right? Coming up with options, thinking very specific, and being very tactical, to thinking more strategic. And longer term, and that will depend on the individual, right? Where they're at, and everyone needs a different level of support, conversation. Some people more detailed, and some people can do more blue sky thinking, and approach stuff, right? So it's just the more time you spend with it and getting to know each individual on your team, the easier that piece is to figure out, what's the best, what are we going to talk about and how, right?
Yep. I had a list of things written down, and I think we've covered a lot of them as to why we have uh,
Yeah.
these one-to-ones, or what's in them. And I wrote down growth, which we've definitely talked about, and trust, which we've talked about. Future strategy, support. We've kind of mentioned all of those. Ideas generation. I think it's a rich arena for really having an hour to think about how are we going to do something, or getting kind of gangs together, different gangs to do different things, and having them saying, okay, what about doing that with somebody? And you might know that that's a good match for whatever reason. And you can kind of be quite a fun people strategist. I put down joy as well as a big part of it. And we've talked about course correction, and we've talked a little bit about performance management as well. So yeah, we've covered a lot of the things that I kind of had brainstormed before we got on the air. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think you've captured a lot of it, Mag. Obviously, if your organisation has growth roadmaps or any kind of structure or core values that you use, or OKRs and so on, those would be things that you would be bringing up in those meetings, right? To see how you're progressing, where do you need support, how can you tackle something differently, what's the ask that you need to make of yourself or others to achieve all of that. And one of the things that often will come up is giving feedback in conversations. And again, this can be short, quick, 5 minute after the meeting where you've spotted something, or it can be more in depth in a scheduled one-to-one that's either a strategic or a growth meeting, however it works to call them in that context. And in fact, there is a if anyone's interested in that, there is a Feedback Conversations infographic that you can grab off the website. You can download that. So if you go to betterconversations.co/feedback-conversations-infographic, you can download that, and it's quite handy to have. I'd really recommend having it easy to hand on your phone, and in that 5-10 minutes that Mag was saying as the prep time before, this is a really great reminder of what you can do. There's the creative alignment piece that happens in conversations, and then there's a contracting piece. And so that infographic, do go for it. There's also a couple of videos that you'll get with that about how to that go into more detail about some of the elements on there. It covers if you're giving feedback remotely, how do you do that? If you've got an individual who's struggling with some personal aspect, how might you approach that? And, understanding the flow. Mag talked about, conversations are not linear. We do jump around. But there is some structure and there is a good flow to conversations, especially one-to-ones. So do grab that and let us know how you get on with that. It's there on the website. Go to betterconversations.co or plug in that full URL and you will get there and get your download. So I think there's so much, isn't there, Mag? There's a lot. There's so many facets to it, and there's no magic formula. It's not a matrix plug-in sort of, I know Kung Fu. I know, it's not like that at all. It is a very personal, very much, getting to know people experience, right? It's a journey.
Definitely. And making it personal, I think, is very important. Whatever style as a lead that feels right for you, you can invest the time figuring that out, with your own lead or with a coach or with a program like Leaders Who Coach. Finding out who you are so that you can show up authentically, I think, is really important. And that helps, when you're aligned as a lead with your values and your strengths, to show up in a way that is truly helpful for the people on your team.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that's been useful, folks. Join us next time on Tuesday next week. I'm going to be exploring why letting go is hard. Why stepping up and letting go is hard, even better. Thank you, Heidi. And this comes up a lot for if you're stepping up into a new role, taking on new responsibilities, or you're becoming a manager for the first time, or a director, or, there's always a tendency to kind of fall back on the stuff that we have done in the past, and the fact that we were maybe more of a doer in that role, and our role actually changes when we do step up. Or if you're a founder and you've started this and built this amazing team, and now it's grown quite big, and you're finding yourself still hanging on to doing some things that maybe deep down it's time somebody else did them. But that can be hard sometimes, letting go. So we'll get into a little bit of delegating. What does that mean? And maybe some ways of reframing seeing yourself differently as you've stepped up in this role. And how you can let go in a way that doesn't create anxiety, gives you peace of mind, and no surprises, because no one likes surprises, especially nasty surprises.
Well, some people like surprises. If it's your birthday.
Well, I think always nice when it's a positive and you weren't expecting, and the quality of work was, way beyond what you were hoping for. But not so great if it means you got more work. You feel like, you're going to have to spend your evening or weekend or pull an all-nighter to turn things around or redo the work.
Absolutely.
Right? So
we
want to avoid that completely. So join me on Tuesday next week. At 1:00 UK time. Mag, this has been fantastic. I'm really glad you're back. I love the exchanges that we have. And and you're going to be joining me the week after next. Right?
I am. I look forward to that talk as well. It should be fun. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Brilliant. Well, I'm loving that you're back. So all great news. That's all, folks. If you've got any questions, do drop Mag or myself a note. Always happy to chat and answer any questions. We'll keep the conversation going if you do. So do join us. I think that was a challenge.
That could be a catchphrase. We'll keep the conversation going if you do. She just flushed that out of the air.
It's a bit of accountability, isn't it? We did have some people sort of saying hello there, which is lovely, and I apologize. I tend to look once I've found my flow and I'm in a rhythm. So everyone who's joined us, thank you for dropping a note in the chat there.
Oh, lovely. Some lovely faces in there. Good.
Drop us a note if you've got any questions. That's it. Thank you, Mag.
Have a great day.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.